I'm gonna come in on you a little closer. Of course, there. Oh, these are your books back there. Let's see. That's good.
Now, David, did you end up with one of my books?
We bought 3 of them.
Okay.
She's a little embarrassed. She hasn't read them yet.
Oh, that's okay.
You know, she's got a list of books. She's a big reader. I'm not a big reader.
Yeah.
I read magazines and I read memes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we're good. I think we can just go just like that. I don't have much in the way of props or anything. We're just going to do this.
Okay. All right. Well, ask me a question and start me off.
Well, now your name is Doug Godsman.
That's right.
That's a good Scottish name, is it?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that. We've traced it back to the 12th century in Scotland, in the area I grew up. And the name was traced back to a priest called Godsman in the 12th century. And the only interesting thing about that is, well, first of all, there are 400 people called Godsman in the world.
Really? Only 400?
Yep. And equally, that was the century that the Pope declared that all priests should be celibate. Clearly my priest didn't get the email. Because here we are, all 400 of us. And my first name, Douglas, has got a little tale attached to it too. I was born in 1941 during the Second World War. And my father was in the Air Force and stationed in England. And their home was in Scotland, Aberdeen. And so she was in Aberdeen, he's in England, but for him to be present at the birth, they encouraged a cousin of my father's to invite us to stay for the birth. Now he was on a farm 6 miles from anywhere, so I'm not sure how enjoyable that would have been.
Yeah.
And as a thank you for him putting him up while my mother gave birth, his name was Bob Douglas, and so I became Douglas Godsman. And so it's interesting. I've met a few people with the back name of Godsman. I got a phone call one night. There was a guy who was the chief executive officer of the American Cruise Line Association, and he just, everywhere he goes, he looks in the phone book. Oh, there's a Godsman. I'll call him and let him know. So that's the background to that. And it is it's a strong Scottish name, and it's. So I'm Scottish Canadian. I'm a ScoCan-CalArkie Mo.
Yeah, now tell me that again. I tried to remember that this morning. A ScoCan-CalArkie Mo. Oh, you've added to it though. Every time you move, you add a little more, don't you?
Well, I couldn't fit South Africa into that, so it's Scottish, Canadian, Californian, Arkansas, Missouri, all the places that I've put down roots for a period of time. South Africa was 6 months, so it hardly counts. But
now, when you go home to Scotland, do you fall back into the brogue pretty quickly?
People know that I've spent time in North America, but and I understand it, and that's interesting. Well, stop me when I say that. There are many small villages in Scotland, and each of them has a slightly distinct brogue. So there's Harry up the road there. He lives 4 miles away, and I'll know he's from there by his accent. So there's that level of comparison to look at, but also there's the fact that there's the upper class, the Downton Abbey folks, and then there's the middle class, and my dad would have fitted into the lower middle class, and then there's the various working classes. Aberdeen's, at the time I was growing up, was a fishing port, so you got all the fisher folk, and then particularly the fishwomen. The boats come in, unload the fish, they come in, nets of fish filleted and gulleted, I guess. And so they got their own language. They actually had their own place that they lived. And then there's the farmers. And the farmers are absolutely incomprehensible.
Now, what is that word?
A farmer.
Oh, farmers.
A farmer, aye.
A farmer.
Aye.
I
Because
love it.
Aberdeen, you're familiar with Angus beef?
Yes.
Should be Aberdeen Angus beef. That's what it's called over
It
there.
came from Aberdeen, is where
Came
it
from that
originated.
area as well,
I
yes.
see, okay.
So, and they've got their own, and I did some harvesting in the field, so I kind of picked up on their accents and so on. So I kind of understood that, which stood me in good stead. One of my favorite jobs was a barman, and I'll get to that in a bit, but basically I'd been traveling in Europe for a year and wanted to spend Christmas in Scotland. 2 days staying at home with my folks, and I couldn't stand it anymore, and got a job as a barman down in the docks, rough part of the world. And so my accent, I was clearly not one of them. Are you a doctor? Are you going to school?
So it's common to be able to place someone's location where they're from by their accent.
Yeah.
Within Scotland. I mean, as you go around, you can tell what part of Scotland they're from the brogue.
Yeah, it's disappearing thanks to the British Broadcasting Service. But even so, it's still, I can tell somebody's from Inverness as opposed to Aberdeen, as opposed to Glasgow, as opposed to Edinburgh. As I said, the villages themselves had their own differences, and so you could recognize people from that.
That's great.
And then being a barman, so I've got this, I didn't have any of the higher class people come in, but I had middle class people come in. I had the dock workers, I had the fishermen, on Saturday they had the farmers market, so I had the farmers. And because of what I'd done so far in my life, I was able to converse with each of them. But they always give me a hard time with my own accent. One of my favorite customers, a guy called Chick, and he would come in and say, hey there, Dougie, how you doing? Oh, fine. I'll have a Pimm's number 10, please. Excuse me? A Pimm's number 10. Well, I'd heard of a Pimm's number 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are cocktails with gin, rum, scotch, and brandy as the basis. Pimm's number 10, what's that? It's a pint of beer with a toffee apple in it. So they were always giving me a hard time.
Something he made up.
Yeah. It was all good. Okay, so as I mentioned, my father was lower middle class. His father was his father was a whiskey salesman, and so my father gained his popularity with whiskey quite freely, and in fact he ended up being an alcoholic, and that was not a good time. But again, the grandfather was a farmhand and worked out on the farms and out in the fields, and so my father, being a banker, he worked as a bank teller in the Bank of Scotland, and then eventually became a bank manager, just at the time that the North Sea oil had been found. And so he was the manager of this bank with Texans coming in. Hey Davey, I need $1 million loan by tomorrow night. Can you fix it for me? That's the wrong accent, but anyhow. But the kind of thing that he would have to deal with. And so quite a transition from my grandfather, a farmer, and him, a bank manager. And
so this is a transition of the area of Aberdeen.
correct.
It's transitioning from mainly a fishing port type of town to now this North Sea oil is bringing in finances and the oil industry.
And jobs and money and people from America and so on, absolutely. It is a fishing port, but it's also a hub for the agricultural area around about Aberdeen, this town of Aberdeen. It was a very successful farming community. So, so And my dad, bless him, he really hadn't got the training in how to be a businessman to, Texas millionaire. So when they would say, "Davey, I got a condo down in Spain. Do you want to use it for a week?" Wrong accent again, sorry.
Yeah, that's the Texan speaking. So
That's
it's
the
gotta be
Texan, yes, that's right. And oh, sure, so off you go for that, and not realizing that he's treading on some narrow, rough ground there, that it might be dodgy, getting infected by the Texans' hospitality. So,
yeah, it's hard to resist.
yeah, exactly. And he was the most honest man you'd ever meet. Most honest man you'd ever meet. And I like to think that's one of my characteristics. And but he had a tough time. His father, my grandfather, I guess it was my great grandfather, was the farmer. But my grandfather had been in the Scots Guards during the First World War, and so that meant that he was very much influenced by the military, 6'2", the military, stand upright, and so on. And so my father didn't have a lot of emotional experience, which he passed on, which was kind of tough for me. Come on, Molly. Come, Molly. Come on. Molly, please. There you go. That's my dog I'm talking to. Just in case you're wondering. Phyllis is my partner, so anyway, that kind of tough upbringing came over to me as well. So, yeah.
All right. And so you were born in Aberdeen.
I was born on a sheep farm in the borders of Scotland, halfway between Aberdeen and where my father was stationed in the Air Force. So it's the closest village was Langham, and it was a sheep farm 6 miles outside of Langham. January 2nd, snowed like hell. My father always complained about what he had to do to register my birth, because he had to walk through 6 miles of snow to get it done. Maybe that explains something.
Sound like you didn't let it go either.
No.
You didn't forget. Didn't let you forget.
Yeah, good memory. And so I stayed there for a whole 6 weeks, and then went back to Aberdeen with my mother. And when my father was ultimately stationed in India, but he knew somebody who knew somebody. He got an early repatriation to Britain. And I was probably about 4 or 5 when I met him again. And so he was, so we moved back to Aberdeen. I was there till I was 10. And then he got transferred within the bank to a town called Perth. It's 50,000 people. And it's about 50 miles northwest of Edinburgh.
United Kingdom uses, or at least Britain uses miles, not kilometers.
I use miles because that's what I'm used to. They use kilometers
They
now.
do use kilometers
now, but in those days it was miles.
I see,
Yeah. And Fahrenheit. Yeah. So I finished my schooling in local, I went to the local elementary school, did well there. I was the best student and the best athlete. And then went to Perth Academy. So there's Perth Academy and Perth High School for this town of 50,000 people. And the academy was the one where they taught Latin and French and that kind of stuff. And the high school was where they taught mechanics and so that's all changed, of course. Now they're all mixed in. However, how they do that, I don't know. And I did pretty well there as well. I was head boy, and I was
head boy. That's something they do in the United Kingdom. Is head boy.
Yeah. And let's see, I was captain of the rugby team, captain of the athletics team, soloist in the choir. If anything was going on, I did it. Both my mother and father worked, so I could go home to an empty house, or I could do something after work, after school. So I would join up for anything that was going on after school. And then towards the end, just at the beginning of my last year in high school, I decided to leave school. And I didn't want to continue with my final year, my 6th year. I already had enough exams under my belt to go to university, except my dad couldn't afford to send me to university, so I ended up becoming a chartered accountant's apprentice, so I like a CPA. Now, this was a good year for me to start being a CPA because they had just started to pay their apprentices. Normally, the dad had to pay the accounting firm for them to train me. I was actually paid $250 a year.
And that was
it.
Yeah, that was better than having to come up for money for the training.
That's right. That's right. So I started work actually before I got onto the CA thing. Any chance I could get to make money was highly encouraged by my father. So I think the first thing I did was picking raspberries and strawberries in this area called the Carse of Gowrie, and a very fertile, wide open valley just north of Perth. And so picking raspberries and strawberries, picking potatoes in the fall, planting potatoes in the spring. Oh, and all this time I'm delivering newspapers too. So
keeping busy.
Yeah, keep me out of mischief, and so keep making sure.
Youthful energy.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had a
We
lot
could use some
of
of
that. Yeah, and Perth was a pretty hilly place, so me and my bike, and of course they got about a 50-yard driveway up to the house, which I had to walk up, a pathway, not a driveway, which I had to walk up, deliver the paper and come back. So they had 6 main papers, from the Scotsman and the Times of London and so on. They're all delivered by train. I'd go to the newsagent shop and pick up my papers, then cycle off to where my route was, and making sure I had the right papers for the right houses. So it wasn't as easy as just the guys on the bike sort of tossing papers on the driveway. I actually had to go and put them through the letterbox. So.
Oh, like a mail delivery almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's always fascinating me. Do you have 2 mail deliveries a day there?
Yeah, they did at that time. Whether they did now or not, I don't know.
That just always amazed me that they had that they talk about the 2 deliveries a day.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We're having trouble maintaining 1.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Britain's having the same trouble with email taking over everything. So
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
But I got in good terms with the postmaster because I'd see him every day, and we'd cross paths at some house or other.
Sure.
And so it got to the point where he would keep my mail or my folks' mail aside, and he would give it to me, and I'd deliver it to them before anybody else had got their mail. So, one of the highlights of my day, so to speak. Okay, where were we? So, becoming a chartered accountant apprentice, I found very quickly I hated it. One of the things that I kind of wished I had got from my parents was more conversation around work. I knew my father hated his job. Molly, get out of here. Go.
No, she don't bother me.
Yeah.
She's fine.
Okay.
She's fine.
Go. So, so we never had a discussion about work and what kinds of work there was. I knew my grandfather was a fish merchant. That means you got up at 4:30 in the morning to get down to the docks by 5.
You were fortunate, I think, I'm hearing, is that actually you had a choice. You had choices, and I don't know that before that, did your father feel like he had a choice in what he did, or he just was the one thing he could do, whatever it was, that's what he had to do? And I hear you possibly had some sort of...
I did, because of my education.
Yeah.
My father's education stopped at the age of 15 when his father came in and says, okay, I've got you a job at the local bank.
And that was it.
That was it. And he stayed there until he was 60, hated every bit of it.
Yeah, you didn't quit. You had a job.
Well,
fortunate you were happy to have it.
Yeah, I actually did quit. I had a job. I continued with my career. It was a 5-year apprenticeship. I was with them for 5 years. I still had a couple of years of exams to do. Couldn't hack it. Couldn't hack it. And so I thought, okay, most people in Scotland take a trip to London anyway at some stage to work with diaspora, the Scottish diaspora. And so it's okay, I'll head down to London. Many of my friends have already, and I'll get set up there. And so, well, what will I do? So I bought some of the big London papers, like the Times of London and the Guardian and so on, looked through all the want ads to see which jobs were popular and well paid. And so I found this job called Work Study Officer, which is an efficiency expert or a time and motion study, Department of Government Inefficiency would have been a character for mine, a target for mine. And so I got a job down there, living in a place called the Caledonian Christian Club. So Caledonia is another name for Scotland, so the Scottish Christian Club. But there's another club called the Caledonian Club. And I applied there to become, to be able to live there. They got a very nice letter back saying, I think you might have the wrong club. He basically said, we cater to the 1%. And based on what you're writing, I don't think you're
not it.
You're not it.
It's the club and you're not it.
Yeah. So I joined the Caledonian Christian Club, and I was sharing a room with a butcher and an out-of-work actor, and living in London. And of course, my salary doubled. Yeah, more than doubled. And finally, it went up quite a bit. I was earning over £1,000, £1,000 a year. So high in the hog for sure.
But the cost of living was more in London, of course, I would imagine.
Well, yes, because I stayed with my mother.
Oh, okay.
In Aberdeen.
Oh,
so,
yeah, you didn't pay rent.
Yeah. So it was. But I managed and got to see quite a bit of London. One of the guys that we hung out with, he had a car, and so we'd all pile in the car and we'd go out to watch a polo match or a rugby game between New Zealand and England or whatever.
I see.
Watch the theatre. I've been to a couple of theatre shows, not many, because again it was too expensive. Stood outside Buckingham Palace, nearly got an invite to go in because a distant relative of my mother's parents had been was on the staff of Buckingham Palace, the Queen's residence. And my grandparents were coming up to have lunch with them. Oh, invite Doug. I was out, and I didn't get the phone message until later. That would have been kind of fun.
Special.
Yeah, it would. Okay, so around this time, I left Aberdeen with a fiancée. She was a phys ed teacher. Training in Aberdeen, and we connected, and we were very well suited in many ways, and so we moved down to Aberdeen. We got married down there, back in Scotland. Damn cold day to wear a kilt, I remember that. So we were living down in London for quite a while, and then we got what I call the dusty letter. There are 2, maybe 3 life-changing moments that I can remember. And one is the dusty letter, 2 is Toastmasters. I'm trying to remember the third one. The dusty letter was a letter from a buddy of mine, a university buddy of mine. Just back up a little bit. The apprenticeship I did for the accounting firm included a year at university, and so I majored in bawdy songs and beer drinking, and also rugby. And if you can tell, I was a keen rugby player, from my high school days.
Now, what does that mean? I can tell. Did you bust your nose or something?
Yeah, my nose was broken and I got off lucky. So I played throughout school and then got to London, and there's a team in London called London Scottish, and they were Scottish expatriates, and they played for this team. Now in Scotland, in Aberdeen in particular, there were some of the senior teams there. They'd have a first team, second team, maybe even a third team. London Scottish had 13 teams. So I showed up there with my kit one Saturday afternoon saying, hey, I'm here, I'm Scottish, can I play? Well, we don't have anything for you this week, but next week we will. So they put me on the 13th team. And they had somebody watching me from the higher up, because I had actually been chosen for the Scottish national students team. And so they heard this pedigree, and so they came to watch me. And the week after the 13th team, I was in the third team, and sometimes I'm in the second team. So that was quite a feather in my cap, and it kind of cemented the social life that I had. One thing about in those days, now again I can't say now, but one thing different in Britain than here. Here you play rugby, you go off and you have your shower, you might have a pint and off you go home. In Scotland, rugby, you go and have something to eat, and you come back and you have a pint or 10, and you're there until the pub closes, which is at 10 o'clock because of wartime restrictions. Not that it was war at that time, but it still lasted on from the 1940s. And so you go back and you end up singing and all kinds of hijinks, and it was just a great place to spend some time. And so, but quite different over here. And how did I get into that story? I don't know, but anyhow.
I think of my time in London, and I think I can see you in Hyde Park playing rugby. Is that right?
Not sure they had pitches in Hyde Park, but round about Richmond and Surrey and all around. I mean, there's probably hundreds of teams, because rugby was the go-to game for the private schools, also known as public schools. Harrow and Eton and all those kinds of places.
And was rugby a winter sport like?
Yeah, starting
like football.
Start beginning of September and finish in the end of March. So it was great fun.
Yeah.
Great fun. Bunch of rowdy Scots. Now, of course, we would, after enough beers, we would break into song, with one exception. If you ever played London Welsh, if you know the Welsh at all, they've got a great reputation for being able to sing in 4-part harmony.
The Welsh?
Yeah, because Welsh come from the valleys, right? And the valleys are full of mines, and they're all working in the mines, and when they're finished in the mines, they've got this reputation for singing. And that was passed down to the rugby players, and so we would go and play London Welsh, keep our mouths shut because they were singing beautifully.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So, and we would go through, some of the major games I would go to would be the international games between Scotland and Wales, Scotland and England. I didn't get over to any in Northern Ireland, which was, as you know, different.
So did your league have a name?
No, not then, but I believe they do now.
But this is a municipal league. This is not anything with any money involved, or it's just people getting together, different clubs of type putting together and playing
and enjoying themselves immensely, and very friendly. I mean, you come off the game and you might have been banging heads and so on. End of the game, well played, sir. Let me buy you a drink.
Yeah.
And I missed that when I came over to North America, played in Vancouver. So getting to America. The Dusty Letter, that's where I was starting.
Yes.
So one of my university friends had, just after he graduated, he decided to go walkabout for a year around the world. And he'd ended up in Vancouver. British Columbia. And he wrote me this letter, and I can still remember the first sentence. Doug, before I say anything else, let me shout out loud that Vancouver is a magnificent part of the world. And he went on to talk about the scenery, and the money you could make, and the sailing, and the money you could make, and the skiing, and the money you could make, and the rugby, and so on. And my then bride Wilma and I had at one time decided, okay, London's great to be single, but we wouldn't want to bring up a family there. So we'd thought about going to New Zealand. Well, Canada's on the way to New Zealand. Hey Dave, we're arriving August the 24th. And so we did. We sold up our stuff in London. The only thing we took with us was the wedding gift that Dave had given us when we got married. And it was a coffee table. Well, here we are, we've got bags and rucksacks and suitcases, and we've got a coffee table to take on the ship with us.
Must have been a nice coffee table.
Not particularly. It was plastic. So, but that gave me, once your wife gets to the point of where the first book, the family is going by ship to America, emigrating. That all is based on my experience going by ship to Canada. I thought it was important for me to understand, first of all, the size of the Atlantic Ocean. Secondly, how big Canada is. Get a sense of as the size of that as well, and get to meet people going on the train going across. And so we decided we would go by train. And there's another particular paragraph in there which is exactly my own experience. So we travelled by train from Aberdeen to Glasgow, where we're getting on the ship. Again, Bella does that in the book too. And then when they're getting on the ship, they're waiting on the dock to get on the small boat called a puffer, which goes out to the big boat, which is too big to get into the docks. And it's out in the road somewhere, and the puffer takes us out there. So we're doing the same. And we're waiting to get on the puffer, and there's a bagpiper. And he's playing dances and melodies and joyful music and getting everybody's spirits up. And I'm looking around, my mother's there with us saying goodbye, and you know, she never cries.
Yeah.
But you could tell, you know, who was going and who was not, because of the people like me, dinks, double income, no kids, excited, adventurous, happy, we can't wait to get on. Bye Mum, see you later. But then there was the young lassie beside me with her baby, knowing she'll probably never see her mother again, and she's crying her heart out. And so I pick up on that kind of atmosphere, which is exactly what I wanted to do. And then being on the ship for all that time, we were not in the bowels of the ship. You know, we did have a cabin to ourselves, but in the bowels of the ship, there's 150 men in one cabin.
Oh boy.
Can you imagine what that would be like? And I can only imagine two buckets in the corner of one port.
Steerage, they call it, right?
Steerage, yes, that's right.
Oh,
So that helped me in terms of writing.
and what year do you think this would be now when you're on the boat?
1966.
1966. And you're how old?
24.
Boy, oh boy. What an experience.
Oh,
And how long was the voyage?
I think it was 6 or 7 days.
Good food?
Fantastic food. It's the first time in my life I had 2 eggs within my bacon.
2 eggs?
Yeah,
Oh, we're living
never
life.
had that before in my life.
Had you not had eggs, or
Oh, we had lots of eggs, but one at a time. So the Scottish breakfast, I may have addressed that somewhere in my writing, but the Scottish breakfast would be a bowl of porridge, oatmeal, and that would be, it would have, so you'd have a oatmeal, and you'd have a bowl of milk. And you would dip your spoon in the oatmeal, dip it in the milk, and then eat it that way. Because if you put the cold milk on the oatmeal, it just becomes a gelatinous mess and not fit to eat. So okay, that's the first thing. Then you'd have 3 rashers of bacon and a couple of eggs, an egg, and then you'd have toasted marmalade, also washed down with tea. So that was the Scottish breakfast. You go down board the ships, they probably had, I don't know, 50 different things that you could eat. Including oatmeal and eggs and bacon and so on, but fruit for breakfast. Wow. Pancakes, and they put syrup on the pancakes, and they have that with their savoury food like the bacon or the sausage.
Was this an American-led cruise line, or Scottish, or Irish? Or?
It was British. It was British. It was the Empress of England.
The British breakfast is wonderful. I had one at Windsor Castle. I went to a little place called Knights and something. It was a little restaurant there. And I had a British breakfast. It was reasonable too. It was like £6. It's just last year. Or no, it was like in 18. 6 years ago. Yeah. And with the baked beans and the sausage and the eggs and
black pudding.
Everything. It had all of that on it. It was amazing to me.
Yeah. So it was the change, but again, so 1945 the war ended, the Second World War ended. So we're talking about my story for Bella starts in 1905. My story starts in 1966. So that's only 11 years from the end of the war.
Now, is Bella one of these characters like your one of your characters in your book?
Yeah.
And she's at the boat like you were.
Yes.
At one point in the book.
That's right.
The way she starts out and she's going.
She's the main female character.
This is a reoccurring theme here, especially in this area of the country where immigrants came. There are so many stories of husbands coming and starting a life here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she's all right.
Okay.
And starting a life here, and then the wife coming with the children, or a child, generally a child or two, coming on her own across.
Yeah.
And what a brave thing to do.
Yeah.
To come with your children without your husband.
Yeah.
And then having to come to a land you've never been to and find them. Come to New York and have to find your way from New York to Kansas.
Yeah, exactly.
And
with all the touts and all the con men,
and all of the pitfalls waiting that you could fall into, and to do that, it's an amazing thing. Really, it's the immigrant story in the United States is really amazing.
Absolutely.
And this is your story. This is part of what your story is.
That's right. Part of this story, we arrived in Canada and we missed the time change. So we thought we had about 45 minutes to get on the train before it left. Actually, we had an hour and 45, but we made the mistake of telling the taxi driver in Montreal, Vite, quickly, get this to the train as quickly as you can. he was off in the Lomand race, and we got there with an hour to spare. Anyway, my wife then says, I need to find the washrooms. Okay, we looked around and found them over there. And so she went hurrying over there, then came hurrying back saying, how much is a dime?
Oh my. Oh, you had to have it. Okay.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, the smallest things can trip you up badly. So anyhow, she was fine. But it was kind of an introduction to Canada. And once again, saying, we're not in Scotland anymore. That's for sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so you came over. You went to Montreal. Your boat landed where?
Montreal.
In Montreal.
Yeah.
What, do you come up the Hudson?
Not the Quebec River, St. Lawrence River. St. Lawrence River.
Come up the St. Lawrence Waterway and into Montreal, and then you went via ground transportation to Vancouver.
That's right. So we were supposed to stay in we were on a Canadian Pacific ship, and we're supposed to go on a Canadian Pacific train, and in between time stay overnight in a Canadian Pacific hotel. Well, we got into Montreal about midday and quickly moved and passed the hotel. We never got there because the trains were going on strike in 2 days.
Oh, so let's go before they
Let's
go
go
on strike.
before you get stuck in Montreal. So again, beat, get there quickly. We're on the train, and we get as far as Winnipeg, and then the train goes on strike.
Oh my goodness.
In between time, we fall in love with the the Canadian wait staff. In Britain, I don't know if you experienced this, but in my day, waiting at tables was not a highly desired job, and they kind of looked down their nose at you, and they were judgmental in what they were doing.
Now you're talking about the waiters themselves.
In Britain, yes.
Well, this is almost it's a joke here in the United States about the French.
Yeah.
And the waiters, how rude they are.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, Britain was much the same.
Mhm.
But we got here, we got on the train, and we got this into the dining car, and I don't remember his name, but I remember his accent, which is strictly out of the Bronx. And he couldn't have been nicer. Went out of his way to make everything as perfect as we could. My then wife's birthday was the day we pulled out of Montreal.
Mhm.
So I went to him and said, it's my wife's birthday. Can you whip up a cake or anything like that? Well,
Something.
of course we can't. I mean, everything is pre-made and loaded on the plane. So anyhow, dinner that night, all of a sudden he's there with all the other wait staff singing happy birthday to us.
Oh, nice.
And I still get, it made such a difference. We were going to be okay. We were going to be okay.
Yeah.
Went as far as Winnipeg. On the way past, we saw a house on fire in the middle of nowhere. No fire trucks, no cars, no nothing, just blazing away.
Oh my.
So we were kind of interested in Ontario, and then we got into the Canadian Shield, which is a couple of billion trees, not very interesting. And then Winnipeg was more wide open with the wheat fields and so on. And again, so the conductor comes through and says, "Oh yeah, you're going to Vancouver. Let me have your ticket." And it's about that big. And he's got a pencil, and he's writing on this ticket and says, "Get a cab to the Canadian Pacific Hotel, and they'll put you up for the night. Then take it to Canadian Pacific Airlines, and they'll get you on a plane to end your flight to Vancouver." It would have taken 3 years of red tape and bureaucracy to deal with that in Britain. I mean, just the fact that...
And this is because the train originally supposed to take you all the way to Vancouver.
All the way, yeah.
But since the strike was on, they arranged for you to fly on
That's
to
right.
Vancouver.
That's right,
Mhm.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was. So I
It could have been terrible.
Oh, it
You
could
could have been
but
stuck in Winnipeg.
it was summer.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Winnipeg can be cold.
Yeah, yeah. So we did actually do that bit from Vancouver to Winnipeg later, but that was a different life and a different wife. So we may get to that. How's your time doing? You got lots of time?
Well, my only concern with this is the battery will run out at some point.
Okay.
So, but it'll record for 2 hours or so.
Okay.
So we're not real too worried about it. I would think 2 hours would be more than enough.
Oh, yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. Well, you haven't had my travels yet. So we get to Vancouver. I can remember flying in the plane, and it's tilting over Vancouver Harbour, and there's the university, and coming into land at the airport. Have you ever landed at the Vancouver airport?
No, I haven't.
So you're 20 yards above the ground. Actually, you're above the water, and it's still going down. And you're thinking, well,
We're going to get in the water.
shall I push the button, the emergency? Can I get out? Where's the emergency exit? And of course there's land, and we land, and then we're welcomed. Actually, we've been through customs in Montreal. Could be nicer, couldn't help us anymore. So again, this pattern of friendliness just washed over us. It was great, and I still reckon it's still there.
There is a difference in the public discourse, in the daily contact between cashier and customer, between people on the street as you meet, in different countries. People are
Yeah. Yeah.
warmer in different countries than they are in others.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
That's true.
and you found that in Canada they were very welcoming
Absolutely.
and accepting of you immediately.
Funnily enough, I saw a bit on the internet talking about the most welcoming countries. And Canada was the 4th in the world. I think the United States is about 22nd. And I think the first one was somewhere like in the Himalayas. I forget the name of the country. Yeah, it might have been,
Something like that, yeah.
could have been that. So, anyhow. So we landed there. My wife Wilma, she had a job lined up already. She'd applied for a job from London. They hired her sight unseen, and so she was set. We landed, I think, on a Thursday, and she was going to start work on the Monday. So we arrived with $300 in our pocket.
Well, that wasn't bad. 66. I mean, that was enough to see you over for a week.
Oh yeah, that's right. And and I had 2 job interviews lined up on the Friday, and I started work on the Monday as well. So we were okay. First weekend, we were staying with my buddy Dave in his apartment with 4 other expats, and one of the expats had a boat, and so we went sailing for the weekend.
This is all.
Vancouver Harbour, sailing. I mean,
It's great.
really? Is this really happening? So it was fantastic. The only problem was that the boat we were sailed in was a triangle end, and it only had 1 cabin. And the owners of the boat didn't really want to share it because they were new married. And
Oh, okay.
so we had to get off the boat, and we found a BC ferry that was docked just up the dock a little bit. And so we went on there and slept under the seats on the BC ferry. I mean, just another adventure that we'd never contemplated any other time.
It's great when you're 24.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And then the next weekend, the group in the house, a bunch of us and a bunch of David's rugby buddies, went camping in the Cascade Mountains in Washington State. A bear walking through our campsite. I mean, pinch me. It was amazing. It's very, very strong, fond memories of that time.
Great.
Okay. Well, work is the most boring part of my life, so with 2 exceptions. Let me tell you about those 2 exceptions. I'd been a computer guy, and I got laid off, and started being an agent for a group of computer professionals. It was Y2K time, and so I had 20 people working for me at one time. I was doing very well. And one time I had an order to fill. I'd been talking to a lassie, Monica, who I'd been working with in a previous life, and she had just taken over the IT department, and I went to her and said, Monica, what kind of help do you need? And she said, I have no idea. I've just started, I don't really know my people. Do you know anybody who could do a human resources audit for me? Well, I'd never heard of such a thing, but hey, I'm a consultant, so you say yes, sure, and started looking around for people to do that kind of thing. And I was talking to this couple, and they said, it's exactly the kind of thing we would like to do, but I think we've got a major contract coming up next week, and it's we're going to be helping ESSO Resources, the Canadian subsidiary of Shell, to help people that they're going to be laying off. They're downsizing from about 6,000 to 1,500 people over a 3-year period. And we're going to be working with the Calgary, rather than living in Calgary at this time, living in the Calgary, they were working in the Calgary shop, and they were going to be downsized. Okay, fine, some other time. 2 days later, I get a phone call from them saying, Doug, remember that contract we talked about? We got it, we're part of the team that's doing it across Canada, and we're going to be needing some people to help us out with that. Do you think you would like to come and be a workshop facilitator for us? We pay $75 an hour. You have my attention.
You didn't have to think very long about that.
Well, I thought, well, what's the worst they can do? They can let me go. Okay, I'm just keep doing what I'm doing. But in the previous life, when I started work for BC Hydro, I'd been approached by one of the guys who was my client within the company. Doug, would you like to join Toastmasters? And I'd heard of them, and I thought that'd be a good idea because I'm not really very good at talking impromptu or in public and so on. So, sure, theme of my life. And so I was quite comfortable in talking to, in front of people. And I did that for about 20 years. And it was without doubt the most rewarding job that I ever had in my life.
And so what were you pitching when you were
Yeah.
up?
So the day has come, the rumors are going around, the boss is in the office with me, the human resources guy. And he asks the secretary, tell Bill to come in, please. So Bill comes in, knowing what's going to happen. And Bill, I'm sorry, your job is being made redundant. I'm going to have to let you go. Doug here is going to help you. And there's no conversation, if it's done right. Once you get in the conversation, there's tears and arguments and fist fights and all kinds of stuff. No, yeah. So they don't know me, so they can't really take it out of me, I hope. So come with me, Bill. I got an office next door, and well, sad news. Yes, yeah. I've trust on and process it. Well, let me tell you some of the things that you need to do today. You need to process it for sure. Yes, you've lost your job. You work for them. You gave them good work, and it's not a reflection on you. Oh, but it's me. It's been laid off, not dimwit over there. That's true, but it's this job, and it's not your responsibility, and it's not your fault. And you have to remember that when you go home tonight and tell your wife. You've got to tell your wife. You got one guy, an IBM senior executive, went home, didn't tell his wife, and went and sat in the park for 6 months, and eventually shot himself.
Well, now it sounds like your job was the one that George Costanza had on Seinfeld, where he was hired to fire people.
Oh,
that was his job.
No, I wasn't. I was the guy who picked up the pieces.
Yeah,
from
you
when
were
he'd been fired.
to help them deal with the fact that they'd
Yes.
been laid off.
Yeah. So later on that day, I'd say, okay, let's just do some dreaming for a bit. Let's just think about if you had all the money in the world, you didn't have anything to worry about, what would you do? Oh, I'd buy a boat and sail. Okay, that'll last you for 3 months and then you'd be bored. What else? Well, I'm actually really fond of woodworking. Okay, let's pursue that. And one guy, SO Resources, I was having dinner in a restaurant in Calgary, a first date with another wife, and this guy came up to me at the table and said, look, I'm sorry to interrupt your meal, but I just need to talk to you. I was one of the people you let go in SO Resources. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to tell you that was the best decision I ever had in my life. And you helped me make that, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, it must have been a very good company. I mean, it seems to me most companies just say, well, you're laid off, sorry, see you later.
Yeah, that's...
To actually provide some sort of counseling for that. It very progressive.
Yeah, so that was in the 70s. So, and SO Resources, I think, was one of the very first. And they went all out. They give a 9-month full pay
severance.
Severance, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And then they gave this workshop as well. And it was a week-long workshop, then access to us forever. So...
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was good. Are you warm enough?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, I'm going to just... You can put that on hold for a moment. I'm going to get a sweater. Suitably warmed.
Good. Well, I was interested in this company that you worked for. What was the company? What did the company do?
Its whole job was helping people who've been laid off.
You were actually
I worked for the consulting company.
Oh, that did
came in as a consultant to help them.
Oh, I see. Transition.
As a resources to make that transition. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
and I totally blanking on the name of the company, but it was a very good company, very well run. And I rose to be the senior consultant there, and then I moved to California, and I did the same thing for a company down there. So again, my favorite work was doing that kind of work. The second favorite job was the barman. I was down in the docks of Aberdeen, all these fish-up people and the farmers coming through, and I learned more about human psychology in that 3 weeks, I think, 6 weeks, in that time than I learned anywhere else. I mean, I was in the working man's bar. There were fights on Friday and Saturday nights. I was behind the counter on a razor, and we had a big billy club underneath the counter. I never had to use it though, so
That's good.
Friday and Saturday nights the management hired a couple of large gentlemen. Never a problem. So
I can empathize with you. I tended bar some myself, and it's yeah, and in an area where people did fight, and it does. It takes some. You know, you have to use your head to stay out of fights.
Yes.
And I didn't. I was not a fighter. I've never been a fighter, but you have to be aware of who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And people don't have a sense of humor a lot of times.
Depends on how the drink grabs them. The head barman was about this tall, and I'm thinking, how on earth does he keep control? Well, he did have the riser and he did have the club, but his approach was psychological. Somebody's starting to get lippy with him. You'll say, you know, you may just have had enough tonight. Why don't you go home, have a cup of tea and some dinner, and come back and later on? And he'd walk away. And the guy's left there sputtering, nobody to fight with now. And if things get worse than a Friday or Saturday night, you'll just call Harry, George, and they'll come over.
Yeah, you got a couple of
allies. Pick him up and deposit him outside. So, but you know, I remember this old guy had been a fisherman, nicest guy, great grin on his face all the time, 70s. Hands absolutely crippled with arthritis. He'd been a fisherman, as I said, so he'd been pulling on wet ropes all his life. Can't close his fists anymore. He'd have a big sports jacket on, big pockets. And he'd be able to dip his hand into the pocket and come out with a bunch of money. Okay, take what you need for the bar and take one for yourself. And take it out and count it out to him, and you know, it was great. I loved it. Yeah. For 3 weeks.
I did it a bit longer than that, but yeah. It's my favorite job. I was when I was 18. I worked as a trash man for the city of Redondo Beach. I picked up trash.
Okay.
I loved that job. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why. People treated me well. I don't know why. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I feel sorry for people who are doing a job they hate. My father, for example, and thinking that, you know, there's something else you can do that you'd love to jump out of bed in the morning, ready to get up. Now I use that in my workshops. Okay, guys, how many of you jumped out of bed this morning? Yes, I get to go to work today. You crazy? So why not? Let's talk about that. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was my favorite job. I was also in IT for a while. Started probably the world's worst programmer, but I became assistant analyst and eventually a project analyst, and I was pretty good for that. One of my successes as a project analyst, I was responsible for Cathay Pacific Airline, keeping track of their booze in flight. They had $5 million worth of booze flying around the world, no means of keeping track of it. So we put in a system, and the first person we fired because of the system was the shop steward, because he was running a bar in Lisbon based on the booze that he stole from the flights. So that was another one, and then I moved down to California. Bonita, just south of San Diego, and then by that time I was married to a minister, and so I was heavily involved in her church, and it was that was a lot of fun too. And in the meantime, doing other work with people who had been laid off. So I got to do that.
You live on a golf course here, and I'm thinking about Bonita.
Yeah.
There's some wonderful golf courses in that area.
I played most of them. Yeah.
I also played most of them.
Yeah.
When I was 15, I golfed a lot at Singing Hills, Cottonwood,
Yeah.
Torrey Pines.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of places down there I golfed.
Yeah. Well, my folks were both very keen golfers. My mother was a 6 handicap, my father a 13, and if you want to think that didn't create tension in the household, you better bet.
Oh,
They
yeah.
rarely played together. And
Oh, really?
my father was, you know, his ego was up his ass. His ego was very high, and he couldn't stand the thought of his wife beating him. But she was a very good golfer. I was kind of in between, about a 12 handicap at my best. But Scotland's great for golf because every village has a golf course. May not be the best kept golf course. I mean, how do you keep the sheep off the greens and such like? But some of the golf courses, you know, are magnificent. And, so
Wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful.
So I'm down there. So I kind of missed out on some of the travels that I've done. When I was living in Vancouver, and with my first wife Wilma, and because of the Wilma, I think I mentioned, was a first-class athlete, and she played field hockey for the Canadian national team, and they had a World Cup in New Zealand. Well, we'd been on our way to New Zealand, got waylaid in Canada, so we thought, well, honey, if you're going to New Zealand, great. I'm going to carry a bag. And so off we went for a 6-week tour. Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji on the way back. And it was great, again, getting to know people, getting to see the way they live. So, yeah, and so 100-year-old egg on the menu in Hong Kong, getting to see the outback in Australia. It was winter, so all the beautiful tropical birds were nowhere to be seen. But
So you went to the outback? You were in Darwin and in those areas, and what's in the middle there? That
Perth is on the far side.
What is on the west
which is
end?
interesting. It's where I went to high school in Scotland, was Perth, and so the Perth. I didn't go there. It was a town called Perth, on the west side of Australia. So there's Brisbane. Went through Brisbane, went out to nature reserve, but again everybody was asleep, so didn't see that much. But got a really big became a big fan of the Australian women because they had to put up with the Australian men who are bigots of the greatest order. Many of them are, but not all of them, but the ones we met.
Well, there's a real machismo sort of thing going on in Australia.
Absolutely.
And, with the men. And I'm particularly fascinated with the Aboriginals and with the culture there. And even now today, the culture, although integrated, is unique.
Yes.
And I listen to Aboriginal music on YouTube, and they're playing rock and roll, but it's Aboriginal. The mix is real, and it's very good.
Yeah. I didn't get out to the Aboriginal outback, but again, we were in some of the major cities, Canberra, Sydney, and Adelaide. So. And Wilma was playing field hockey in each of the games in each of those places.
Oh, that made it nice. You had a thing to do, a way to interact.
And they were trying to get their team to cohere before the actual World Championships came up. Because, a national team in Canada is tough to put together.
Now, field hockey, is that played afoot?
Yeah. Played on foot. Many ways like soccer, except you have sticks and a ball, kind of like field ice hockey.
Uh-huh.
And you've got some rules, and then the ball is almost like a cricket ball. So if you get hit
Ooh, it
badly
can hurt.
with that, you can really get hurt. But the rules say you've got to keep your stick below your shoulder, and so it's not quite as.
Do they wear a helmet?
They probably do now. Yes, they did.
Yeah, they didn't now in lacrosse too. They wear
Yeah.
with face shields and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
probably do in field hockey now, like you say.
I would think they do. So anyway, they did well. They came in ninth, which is the best the team has ever done. So they were, and it was a great,
Canadian field
great-
hockey.
yeah, great group of people. There's a lot of people like me, the guys who were, back carriers, and when they were training, we'd go off to the pub and meet the locals and get to see Sydney Opera House. So, and of course, it can be a beautiful country as well. We're in Sydney, we got to be on the beach, Bondi Beach, and barbecues all over the place, and it was great. So then we get to New Zealand, and the only thing better than Australia was New Zealand. Of all of my countries I've been to, and it's probably, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, I'd choose New Zealand as the one I'd like to go back to most. In fact, I lived there most. So got there, and they were kindest hopes you can possibly meet, and the tournament was going on, and countries from all over the world. So, places like Great Britain would have a country from Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, France, Quebec, Canada, so just all over the place. And it was great to be a part of that. And as I say, they did well.
Is that where the World Cup was held that year? Then?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes.
And where in New Zealand were you for the Cup?
Basically in Auckland.
Uh-huh.
They did have other games, just like the warm-ups in Australia. They had other games before and after, which took them to the North Island and the South Island. So I travelled throughout the South Island quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I got to see Auckland and Wellington and Invercargill and Edinburgh and all the places down in the South Island. Lots of Scottish influence there. Of course, the Maoris were a major influence too. Beautiful people, and and they have Cook Islanders who are, I think, they're a protectorate of New Zealand. So we saw all that, and then 10 times as many sheep. Lamb chops were great.
And sheep were not indigenous. They brought the sheep in. Didn't
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Yeah. Lots of wild and dangerous animals in Australia. And I'm sure there were in New Zealand too, but they weren't as obtrusive as they were in Australia.
It pays to be aware of what's there when you're in Australia,
That's
or
absolutely.
you can actually get hurt.
Dead.
You get dead. Yeah, that's right. Brown snakes or something,
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, all that kind. Snakes are certainly one of the things, and the spiders.
Mm-hmm.
They'll eat you up and kill you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're traveling with friends. Very often I'd be in a car I'd be in the passenger seat, and the driver and the two people in the back would be telling me all the things I should be seeing and looking at, and it was, okay. So that was to Australia. So on the way back we stopped in Fiji and we played a couple of games there as well, and then we did some R in Fiji. One of the things we're going to do is take a boat out to one of the party islands and spend time there and swim and have a barbecue and some beer and just had a great time out there. And we buy a hotel to pick up some guests from the hotel to come with us. I remember sitting in the bus watching this little old lady, blue-haired old lady, the blue-haired rinse in those days.
Yes.
And she's sitting there, probably in her 70s, and here we are in paradise, and she's looking as miserable as sin. And I made up a story about her, about how she and Harry were going to travel when Harry retired, and Harry, inconvenient soul that he was, promptly up and died. So here she was in honor of Hattie on this trip, round the world trip, and hating every bit of it because she's got nobody to share it with, and she can't stand being there. So it made a big impression on me. I thought, you know, I'm not going to do what they did. I'm going to do more what my maternal grandparents did. My grandfather retired when he was in his 50s, and they started traveling. They first moved from Aberdeen to the south of England, where the weather was better. Then they would take a trip to Bermuda, Bahamas, any of the British protectorates where their money could go, and you know, anywhere that was dollar based, they couldn't afford to go to. And then they started traveling on cruise ships and taking cruises, and then they moved from cruise ships to cargo ships. All the cargo ships would have a couple of cabins for tourists. So they'd be on this cargo ship, and they'd have dinner with the captain every night, and they would go, you know, all around the world. They were going on a trip, I think around South Africa, and the captain got a message from the head office saying, sorry, you've been rerouted, you've got to come home via Australia and New Zealand. So they went around the world, and every time they'd stop anywhere, I'd get a postcard from them, you know, with the highlights of what they'd seen. So I'm, you know, Grand Cook, you're the trouble for all of my reason for all my travels.
So they were headed around South Africa.
Yeah.
And they were headed which way? They were headed.
I think they were going from the west coast of South Africa, round the Horn, Cape of Good Hope, excuse me, and then in Cape Town. I think that's when they got redirected, and then they would have to go on to Australia and New Zealand, and then come back. So quite the trip they were.
That's a long trip.
Oh yeah.
Long trip.
But again, she was the one. It was her more than her husband, my pop. She was the one who birthed my love for travel, and that's why I traveled as much as I did. So we came back.
We'd be a miserable lot without women, wouldn't we?
Hear that, the fellas? Just agreed with David here. We'd be a miserable lot without women.
I'm sorry, sweetheart, what?
We agreed that we'd be a miserable lot without women.
It's true. It's true.
Absolutely true.
I mean, you know.
You fellas want a cup of coffee?
We're passing on the coffee, I think.
No, I'll have a cup. Sure.
Okay.
Okay, you want some
Yeah.
coffee?
Yep.
I take
Black.
mine
Do
black.
you take anything in it?
Black.
Black, okay.
Thank you.
So my then wife and I, Wilma, we decided, what about it? Sure. So we sold up our possessions and crammed everything into a suitcase, traveled to Strasbourg in France, bought a Peugeot at the factory, and traveled through Europe for a year and a day.
In a Peugeot. That's brave.
Yeah.
That's brave.
No, it was a great car. Never had any trouble with it until I sold it, and then they had trouble with it.
Yeah. Well, I must have bought yours.
Yeah.
The Peugeot did not work out well for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which model?
Oh, I don't remember much about it. Actually, it's been 50 years ago,
Yeah.
45 years ago. You know.
Might be in a CV2 or something. Mine was the 504, a really nice sedan. So we went from, we started in Strasbourg. This is in, we've living in London, but we went first of all to ski in Austria, came back, and the salient factor was that our car, Morris Minor, wouldn't start because London had snow, unheard of. So that was the really deciding factor. What do you think? Yes, we're going to travel. So,
There you go.
thanks, Ann.
Yeah, I'm gonna put yours right over here. There we
All right,
go.
without the coaster. Thank you.
Oh, I think it's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we went from France through Switzerland to Austria, through the Iron Curtain into Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, East Germany. Went through, the wall was still up, and we went through the wall from the East German side and into West Germany, and then back onto East Germany and up to Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and back to Scotland. So by this time it was Christmas.
Now, do you take a ferry from Norway to Scotland?
Yes, we did. Oh, thank you, my dear. Just one? Okay.
Well, I hope you. I've been craving molasses cookies.
I
so I mean,
can't. Thank you.
You can't have any of these. Oh,
No, I can't. Thank you, though.
no, you're very welcome. Here, I'll leave them for you.
Well, no. Let me take one more. Take the rest, dear, please. Yes, so we took a ferry from Norway to Edinburgh. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was great. We highlights included the Berlin Wall for sure. There's a walled town in France which was built to keep the Muslim invaders out when Morocco was
Now, where is
totally-
this in France?
Yeah, on the border between Spain and France,
Oh,
because
okay.
Spain was heavily influenced by Morocco. Muslims.
Sure.
And so they had built this town called Aigues-Mortes, or Aigues-Mortes. Eagle, death of an eagle, that's the translation, Aigues-Mortes. And a small place, had a walled town all around it. It's quite near.
I'm thinking of Andorra. I'm thinking of the mountains there. What are the Pyrenees?
Yes.
The Pyrenees, and then the wall must have been either to the west or east of the Pyrenees, I would think.
Well, the walled town.
Oh, I see.
It's a town that's surrounded by a wall to keep the invaders from Spain coming through.
Oh.
Now, their geography was a bit wrong. The Moroccans never got as far as the town, so it's pristine. This old town with narrow streets and big walls, and it was great. It was great. Talking about the friendliness, I remember us being, it was a feast day, and we were having, and we'd seen the cows, the bulls, driven in from the country. So there's a place where the French have white bulls, Perpignan, I'm not sure, and they're driving them in because they're going to have a bullfight. And the bullfight is different than the Spanish bullfight, much more humane, because they tie a red ribbon between the horns of the bull. And then the young men of the village get in the ring with the bull, and they try and grab the red ribbon off it. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they suffer for it. And then that night, the village had a big dinners in all the restaurants. And we were in a restaurant, and I'm looking at the guy next to me, a young teenage guy for a dinner with his girlfriend. I'm looking what he's eating and not sure what it is. And he sees me looking at it, says, in French, "Do you want to try?" Oh dear. But it didn't look very good. Anyway, I did, and it was terrific. It was, I don't know what it was now, but it was, but just again, friendliness. And I found that if you can speak a few words of the language, please, thank you, 2 beers,
Anything.
I love you, the important words, then you can get along with most people.
Oh, they appreciate it.
Yeah, they do. You're a guy who's right.
And even if you sound funny, it just creates a connection somehow.
Exactly.
It's an icebreaker. It's everything. It really means a lot when you do that. You expose yourself to ridicule because you're probably not saying it right, and they appreciate your willingness to do that. I speak terrible Spanish, but it's been wonderful for me. This terrible Spanish I speak has just been a godsend. It's 1 billion more people I can talk to.
Yeah. Well, I took 5.5 years of French.
Oh, so you do speak some French.
Yeah. My then wife did 6 years of German. So between the two of us, there's not many places we could go and not be understood, unless the person didn't want to talk to us.
In 2018, we went from Kansas City to Heathrow,
Mm-hmm.
via Chicago, and then to Heathrow. We spent 4 days in London,
Mm-hmm.
an Airbnb right by the Thames, a few
Mhm.
blocks from the Thames,
Mm-hmm.
and spent 4 days in London, and then took the Euro through the Channel to Paris, rented a car in Paris, and spent 4 days in Paris, drove out through France and Germany, down to Italy, Austria, Italy, went to
Wow.
Rome, went all the way down to Rome.
How long did that take you?
We were there a month, about a month altogether. When we'd come back, we came back and went all the way back to Heathrow and flew
Mhm.
back home from there.
Mm-hmm.
And what wonderful,
What a wonderful trip.
wonderful trip.
So you know of what I speak then?
Yeah, well, and I've had 3 different stints. I was in the Navy in Spain for 2 years in 70 to 72.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was back again in 06 with my first wife. And then I went back in 18 with my second wife.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wanted to talk them into going to, I'd like to go to Asia or you know, mix it up, but they always want to go to Europe. So
Yeah.
I got to take them to Europe, you
Yeah.
know. And I still haven't gotten to Australia or New Zealand or India or Kathmandu or
Yeah.
many places I'd like to go.
You're young enough, you'll do it yet.
Right.
You may be surprised, maybe not, but I used to be extremely, extremely shy.
Uh-huh.
And now I talk to you about Toastmasters, and that changed my life and made me very comfortable in any condition. Most lately, over the last maybe 20 years, particularly giving the workshops, finding that people listen to me, which is a nice thing,
Yeah.
they're doing it. But equally, it just allows me to say yes to many different things. What's the worst that can happen to me? They can laugh me off the stage. Fine. Not a problem. So, as I say, my autobiography, if I ever finish it, is going to be called Sure, A Non-Linear Life, and that's the attitude I've got. Who cares what other people think? If they got a problem, that's their problem. It's not mine. So
It's a lesson that we'd have to reteach ourselves daily.
you're right. You are right. Yeah. Okay. So where have I been? I've been to Europe, and I was talking to you about the places that I found most memorable. So certainly the walled village Egmont was one of them. One of the other ones was a German concentration camp. I forget the name of it now. It wasn't the famous one, but you got a sense as to, you know, just that black shadow over the whole area. It's as though nothing grew. I mean, it was just death.
It was cursed.
That's the good word. Yes, cursed indeed. And so
It wasn't the famous. He said it wasn't Dachau or Auschwitz.
it was not a famous one. It was
Yeah.
probably a very, how can you say, a small concentration camp. And interesting enough, we met a guy when we were traveling the day before, and we got there, and he came with us, and he was German, and he was just shaking his head. How could they? What were they thinking? And now that could have been put on for our benefit. I don't know, but you know, at least there has been some change.
You know, you say a small concentration camp.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a small war.
That's right.
It was not a small war to the one man who died in it.
Going through the various borders, particularly between the east and the west. Going from the west, they would go through the eastern border guards would go through everything. But I remember, so we're in this car, we've got our trunk open, and they're going through our suitcases and so
This is
on.
going into East Berlin?
Into East Germany.
East Germany, actually, yeah.
Yeah. So going in there, and we've got our suitcases open, and there's this young East German guard, a young lady, and she's opened our suitcase, and she's looking through one of the books that we bought at the art gallery in Rome. So, you know, she was just loving seeing them, and you could tell that she was...
She wasn't inspecting as much as she was absorbing.
Exactly, and changing her mind about a few things, I'm quite sure. So, anyway, that was the European trip, and so, yeah, we had a good time on that.
Yeah.
So I've been to Cozumel, and I've been to Hawaii, and I've been to other places.
I've been to Cozumel myself.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Cancun, I went to Cozumel.
I was in Cozumel 60s probably. So.
And I've been to Hawaii. I spent a few weeks in Kauai.
Mm.
And I like that.
Cozumel was great because we got tucked in behind a couple who both spoke Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
He was a professor of Spanish at New York University, and she was from Venezuela, somewhere like that. So we were both competent, and us bumbling along Doctor Veta, not much more than that. And so we were hanging out with them for a bit, and they came to us one day and said, you know, we've just rented a fishing boat for the day. Do you want to come with us? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So off we went, and there was a man in probably his 40s, and he had his 10-year-old son, Miguel, and they were the crew, and took us out in a small fishing boat, and puffed along for a little while on the coastline, and he threw the anchor and said, "Okay, we're going to collect some conch shells." Is that the right way to pronounce it?
Conch shells.
Yes. Yeah.
Conch. Well, and I may pronounce them wrong either, but I've always called them conch shells.
Okay. So as long as you understand.
And you can break off the end of them and blow them.
Yeah,
They're
that's
wonderful.
right.
I have one that you can blow on.
Well, we were collecting the whatever the worms, I think they are, inside the conch shells. No, whatever lives in a conch shell. So we were collecting those because we're going to use them for bait for go fishing. So that was different in itself. And you know, the water was about 10 feet deep, and you know, here we are in the Caribbean, catching our dinner. It was surreal. And then so on, we went a bit further, and we'd be trailing our baits behind us and catching fish, and he'd marinate them in lime juice and so on, and then we would eventually get to an island, and he'd run the boat up onto the island. There was a little hut there, and nobody around it, but it was there. They had a barbecue set up, and he started the barbecue, and another fish pulled in further down the beach. And he went and over talked to them. It was a very serious conversation, I can tell you. So anyway, the guy came back, our captain came back, and very concerned, and said, "Well, how would you feel if we swapped some of these fish?" "Okay, what would you swap them for?" "Lobster." So again, just perfect people, great, and no, nothing worse.
Not much loss there.
No.
Well, you probably fishing for swordfish, marlin of some sort, or small swordfish?
No, we were just around the shore. So
Oh,
yeah,
good.
it was shore.
But you had some fish and you got lobster for them. That's
Yeah.
not a bad trade.
Yeah, we had fish and lobster, so that was good.
Yeah.
Okay, what else do you want to know?
Well, I want to know about, I guess, about Scotland. I guess, you know, I really found it interesting your discussion about the language and about the different brogue and such. Can you speak in a heavy brogue?
I can do that very easily, fella. On by your head, get off Gummerall.
That's interesting.
So that was me telling somebody, not you, but telling somebody, go away and boil your head, you silly fellow. And then, of course, there's the Gaelic. Now, Gaelic is not a Romansh language like English or Greek or French or anything like that. It is similar to, or similar. It is in the same category as Finnish, which is incomprehensible to anybody who doesn't speak it. Gaelic is the same. I mean, I knew 2 words, Slanjivar, good health, when you're having a drink. So, but okay, so Scotland again, it's been trying to become a country for, since the Roman times. In fact, the Romans probably hurried it up because they've got the wall between England and Scotland called Hadrian's Wall. And that was the demarcation line for a long time between Roman England and untamed Scotland, if you like. Then the Romans made some advance, maybe 40-mile advance into Scotland, and there's another wall built there at the narrowest part between 2 inlets, the Firth of Clyde and the Firth of Forth. And
now, what are you saying there?
Firth is the name for an inlet. And so there's one on the east coast called the Firth of Forth, and this, and then on the west coast there's another one, and they come, I'll say maybe 50 miles within each other. So they built a wall there as well.
Is this a formidable wall that actually keeps armies out?
It was, yeah. You can still see the wall in good shape in some places. The northernmost wall, what do they call it? St. Antonine's Wall, and the northmost wall, it's getting in disrepair, but the Hadrian's Wall is in good shape, and that's the one very close to the border between Scotland and England. So then as around, I think it was around 300 or 400, the Romans had to pull back, and Scotland came and became a kind of wild place for a while. Fierce people, very proud, got great historical and artifacts. I don't know if you've read anything about the Stone of Scone.
The Stone of Scone, no.
Okay, so in London, in Westminster Abbey, they have the coronation chair. And on a ledge underneath the coronation chair is the Stone of Scone, which I think is about 3 tons or I can't quote me on that.
Big stone.
Big stone. And all the Scottish kings got crowned on that stone. And when Scotland and England became the same country, supposedly in the 1600s, the Scots got the stone down there, and so the kings of the United Kingdom were crowned on the Stone of Scone. Scone is the name of a village just outside the town of Perth that I'd mentioned earlier on, and that was the first place that we lived when my dad got shipped down to Perth by his company.
Oh, as a banker? He went to Perth as a banker later?
Yeah.
He was in Aberdeen and then he went to Perth.
And then eventually back to Aberdeen again. Yeah. So,
Well, okay.
So, I don't know if what's the other thing I was talking about? Have you been reading anything about Salisbury's Plain and Stonehenge?
No, but I am interested in the some of the politics of Scotland. What is the actual arrangement between Scotland and England now?
Well, the easiest way to say it is that Great Britain's got 4 counties, 4 states. England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. Not to be confused with the country of Ireland.
Of course, yes, I understand.
There's the island there. And so they had in the 1600s, they merged some of the laws, but not all of them. For example, in England, you have to have parents' permission to wed before you're 21. Scotland, 16. So you get people crossing the border, young people keen to get married and going to Scotland, particularly to a place called Gretna Green, and they can get married in Scotland.
So this is sort of a rite of passage for a young couple who does not have the approval of their parents.
Exactly.
They elope or they head to Scotland and get married.
Yes,
and
that's
it's
right.
legal.
And it's legal, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's other laws as well. For the longest time, they had different banknotes. And I think they still do.
You
But,
had your own currency in Scotland for many years.
That's right. And it was grudgingly accepted in England, but some places would give you, instead of a full pound, they'd only give you 19 shillings and 6 pence instead of 20 shillings.
Charge you for the exchange.
Charge you for the exchange. Well, there wasn't any, but just taking it to the bank had to take it. There's other laws as well, the real estate laws, the property laws, and but mainly it's still there's one major laws are covered in covers the whole of the United Kingdom. So the politics, they have a Conservative Party. They have, which is similar to the Republicans. There is a New Democrat Party, similar to the Socialist Party, I guess. And they have a Liberal Party, which bounces in and out and sometimes always gets enough votes to create a deciding tie between and I'm talking about the House of Parliament in London now. So Scotland's got representatives down there based on the population. In Scotland there is a parliament as well. And the Scottish Nationalist Party is a big component of that, and they're for depends what year it is. They're for Scottish nationalists. In other words, we want to be a separate country all to ourselves. Or they recognise, if we do that, we don't get this, and we can't afford that. So maybe we'll just be an irritating party in the side of whoever's in power in London.
So now you don't have a Scottish army, but you do have the Scottish Guard.
Yes.
And are you Catholic in Scotland? Most of the people Scottish. I think of the Swiss Guard that are at the Vatican, not the Scottish, the Swiss Guard. So this has nothing to do with the Catholic Church then,
no.
That way. And did Scotland go with the Church of England when?
There's a Protestant church called the Church of Scotland, and and there's a schism between them for sure. But of course, there's quite a few renegade churches going on there as well. There's too many free thinkers.
What is the Catholic Church in Scotland? Are there Catholics?
Yes.
And there are Catholic churches in Scotland.
Particularly on the west coast.
And was it ever the official church of the state of Scotland, the Catholic Church?
It's a good question. I'm not quite sure. See, the Scottish...
Not within recent history.
Not within, for sure.
And when George broke away from the Catholic Church, that was England breaking away. But at that time, England was running Scotland as well. So,
I'm not clear on that, but I think when England broke away, don't do that. When England broke away, that was at the time of the Reformation, when the
so it'd be 1500s with Martin Luther.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to remember.
And it was at the same time when they broke away.
Well, 1600 was when the Scots and the English got together, so that's not particularly clear. But there was a strong Catholic movement in Scotland, but then I guess probably there's the Calvinists, and they are Protestant oriented. So, but I would say certainly the main church in Scotland is the Protestant church.
Well, I'm expecting a lot from you to be a Scottish historian. You're not really a Scottish historian, but you just by nature know more about it than I do, which is good enough.
Well, I suspect I probably don't, but anyhow, thank you for that.
And the other thing I was wondering about is your writing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is this the bulk of your writing? Is this the main thing you've done? These 3 books,
Yeah.
the Highland Journey, the Highland Justice, and the Highland Jubilee.
Yes. I would have to say, so at high school my writing was pretty poor. In fact, well, 7 out of 10 was the best I ever got, except once. But interestingly, I remember that one, 8 out of 10. But yeah, it was because I didn't have anything descriptive. So bear in mind that I come from a Calvinistic family, not much colour in their home, in their dress, in their writing. So I wasn't exposed to a lot of that. So then I started working in business, and I was writing business reports and proposals and so on. So
Pretty dry.
pretty dry. And then I retired, and I thought, okay, I can't play. My back's not good enough for me to play golf every day. So what else am I going to do? I've had a very interesting life, as I hope you agree, and I think I'll write my memoirs. So I started writing my memoirs, and after the first channel, I had a look at what I'd written and realized that what I'd done was create a cure for insomnia. Oh! So I went and took some classes at community college in Northwest Arkansas, and learned a lot. And that I read all my life. I'm an avid reader, so I guess it absorbed some stuff. And then at the end of the classes, the professor came to me and said, you know this short story you wrote? Mm-hmm. You can get it published. So I thought about that and thought, well, hold on. If I'm going to get it published, I'll write that full-length story. And it's not going to be about a fisherman in the North Sea, between Scotland and Germany. I'll choose another main topic. Where else have I been lately? Ellis Island.
Oh.
So that was the middle of the first book. Who's on it? Who gets to it? How do they get to it? What goes on? What goes on afterwards? How do they get together? And then I found out that I enjoyed it and it was well received, and kept on writing until I finished the third. The third book kind of beat me up a little. I was having a tough time getting it published, just the technology of it. And, get up in the morning, check my email, no, this isn't quite right, do something different. And it took me months and months to get it eventually published. And, excuse me. So then I finished that maybe 3 years ago, and started selling my books, and of course it eats into my desire for company and for corresponding, communication with people, and I even sell some books on occasion, so this is a good thing. And but as I say, that third book kind of put me off fiction for a while, so I'm thinking about going back to my history and my
Non-fiction. Yeah, and so you wrote, is this the order you wrote them in?
Yeah.
Highland Journey first?
Yeah.
And then Highland Justice next?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
And great.
Journey. My wife came up with the names. I got Highland Journey because I was thinking of the journey across the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
But then by the time I got into the other two, and she said, well, keep with the J. And, oh, that's a nice little trick. so that's what we did.
Terrific. That's terrific. It's just retirement has been, a revelation to me in a lot of ways. Just that you learn so much about yourself when you can do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And it's just really very rewarding.
I totally agree. I wonder about people who, they're dreading retirement and then they finally retire and they hate it, and or they have to go out and get a job at a gas station or something, and this could be better. This could be better. And I'm the same as you. I've done a lot of things in my retirement and enjoy them. And Phyllis and I met after I retired, and we met online in California, and 15 years ago, and it's been great ever since. Except for that day.
Except what day?
The day it wasn't great. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but yeah, I've run into so many people, met so many people, heard so many stories that are just, it just seems like you're able to do so much more in retirement when you're not tied down to a job.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed my job. I drove all 48 states in a big truck and saw a lot. And I've walked around every city, every big city in this country. I've actually had time off to walk around and enjoy all of them. You know, I can name on one hand the number of large cities that I haven't really just walked right around and been a part of.
Yeah.
And a wonderful career for me. I was particularly suited to truck driving. I wasn't married and I could do these things. But as far as doing something really that I enjoy in the moment, this retirement is these videos and this meeting people and doing this. It's just been great for me.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're doing it. I've enjoyed our conversation. And so you're going to put this on, I'm going to sneeze if I'm not careful. You're going to put this on Facebook or YouTube?
YouTube.
Okay.
I put it on YouTube.
And that's on your card.
I've got 170, I now have I've just realized the other day that I have a body of work now. I have 177 videos on YouTube.
Wow.
And I don't, like I say, the technology I have is what I've managed to pick up. I don't, you know, like I don't use lighting. I don't use a whole lot of sound equipment. I don't do all those things. There's so much more. If I could put it in, I could buy the big equipment. I've got the money to buy big equipment, but I don't know enough about it to know what good it would do me. This is what I do. It's complete.
Well, one thing about this way is it's non-frightening.
It's not intrusive in a way.
Well,
that having lights and a big operation is. Yeah, it's too much.
Right.
It's too much. And you know, I feel that it's important, but it doesn't need to, you know, it doesn't need to look important or, you know, to be important. It is. Yeah. It is of itself important.
Yes.
Just because people and their stories are important.
Yeah.
They matter. Yeah. And they matter to me.
I agree.
And I worry about the quality of my videos a lot of times, but that's not what I'm about. It's not what I do. What I do is I find people and I preserve them. I have preserved you in a way that if you have grandchildren or if you have people that care about you, even if, you know, it won't, even at the best, it would get a few hundred views. Yeah. You know, people would actually look in and see what you have to say. Not a lot, but, you know, it's important to, beyond the people that watch it on YouTube that don't know you, it's important to your family, to your kids, to your grandkids. They want to know, what was your mom like? Yeah. And you can tell us something about your mother. You know, you obviously loved your mother, you respect her, you got your love of travel from her. What can you say about that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Talking of kids, I have two. My daughter Jennifer and my son Neil, good Scots name, and they live in Calgary, and they're in their 40s now, and I am so proud of them. My daughter is, I'm not sure what her title would be, but she worked for a major corporation, a corporation with $1.5 billion contracts. And she's a rising star in that corporation. And she's living on the west coast of Vancouver Island in a truck and camper. And she's been doing that for years. She and her man, Lewis, and they're happy as clams. And on occasion she'll have to go to New Orleans or somewhere for a conference, and she'll come by here to say hi and make sure we're still kicking. And I'm just so blessed to have her in my life. My son is exactly the same. I'm so blessed to have him too. He has my 2 grandchildren. I have 2 great-grandchildren. I have 2 grandchildren who are great, and my son and his wife, Nimi, are great as well. He's kind of in a misplaced situation, he tells me, and I have no reason to believe him otherwise. He would like to be a professor of philosophy. Currently he's managing a grocery chain in Calgary, and but again, he's got his people love him, and he's doing the right thing with people, and I couldn't be.
And it's work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and I couldn't be prouder of both of them. They're great, great people, and I doubt that they will watch the YouTube video, but maybe their grandkids might. So.
Now you did mention your dad.
Yes.
And my dad was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
My brother died early, in part alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you're comfortable about talking about your dad and how what happened to him and what happened to your family in that way. What was the effect on your family?
Yeah. I've no trouble talking about him at all. I mean, I think it's a good thing that my kids know a bit about him. As I said, he had no choice. His father was a whiskey salesman. So,
yeah. So
what else is going to happen?
Came by it honest.
Yeah, and Scotland is a heavy drinking people. I mean, one thing I probably haven't mentioned so far, but people don't realise that Scotland is a very northern European country. And northern European countries like Russia and Sweden and Norway are heavy drinking countries. Scotland's no different. My hometown of Aberdeen on that east shoulder of Scotland, go 4,000 miles due west and you end up in
Oh, you did? Yeah, you did tell me that. When you go west from it, you're in Anchorage or something.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Anchorage, Juneau.
In Juneau.
Juneau, yeah. So, so they're a northern European country and they drink appropriately. So again, he had very little choice, and certainly the people he hung out were of a similar ilk. I didn't notice it being a problem. Probably. Maybe I was 15, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then I recognized that some of my other family treated him a little differently than he had been treated, and not as warm towards him. And he became a functioning drunk. So he still had his job at the bank. He went to a big party that was thrown by the parents of one of my girlfriends, and the parent was so much an alcoholic that he filled my father up with everything, and so my father went to work the next day, and his boss said, "No, you're in the back office today." He still reeked of booze.
Oh boy.
So I think that's the only time it maybe affected his work life. So I say he's a functioning drunk, but his life beyond that was he? Did it change his attitude towards life? Maybe somewhat. He and I never got along. I very rarely did I have to, but on occasion I'd protect from my mother from some verbal abuse. But beyond that, he wasn't abusive. Emotionally, yeah, but hey,
well,
he's Scottish, so.
I notice that the alcoholics are generally towards their children, especially towards their male children. It's just were you a disappointment to him in his verbiage towards you? Did he indicate to you that you were less than what he wanted from a son?
I did fine until I decided I wasn't going to be an accountant.
Oh.
He thought that was a big feather in his cap. My son's not going to be a CA, but I chose not to. But on the flip side of that, I had a lot of accomplishments growing up. You know,
Yeah, being a head boy and
being the dux of the school, being the student athlete, being the Scottish University first team pick.
Yeah.
You know, lots of things. And the only thing that I can remember him praising me on was I sat one final exam to become a chartered accountant apprentice, and it wasn't at school, it was on my own doing, and I passed, and that's the only thing I can remember him being excited for.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cold. Was it different than many others? I don't know. Scots don't talk about that side of thing then, so hard to say.
But you'd say that Scottish is Northern European and a heavy drinking country. People drink a lot here, but not in that way, I guess. You say, I mean, there was a big change in this country when they, with Prohibition, of course, and then, but later with, there's been a real change in attitudes towards alcohol in my lifetime. Just, we used to, you'd carry an open beer in the car. People won't do that now, and it's frowned on.
It was the drunk driving law. People could not, excuse me, people got afraid of the drunk driving law. If I lose my license, I lose my livelihood. So I can't drink and drive. And so they'd stop doing that, which is really sad because all the cute little pubs depended on somebody maybe walking to them or nowadays probably driving to them. Can't do that anymore. So,
I never drink more than one beer if I'm anywhere where I'm not going to go to my bed. From where I'm drinking to the bed, I'm not drinking more than one drink.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say something profound, but that's gone too. I mostly quit drinking maybe 10 years ago. Nowadays I'll have maybe possibly one every couple of months, and I don't miss it. In fact, when I do break down and say, I need a beer.
Well, it doesn't make you feel as good as it used to.
No, because I only had one.
You still felt good after a few beers. And now if I have 3 beers, I'm done. I don't feel good either.
No, I'm the same. Yeah. So drugs was never a feature in our family. I've got a nephew who's he used to have longer hair than the Rolling Stones and tried to break into big time guitar music on rock and roll and didn't make it. So he's selling pot in a pot shop nowadays.
Is pot legal in Scotland?
In Canada. He's in Canada.
In Canada, it's quite legal in Canada.
Yeah. I don't know about Scotland. Don't know. Yeah.
A lot of places, even though it's not legal, there's not enforcement against it either. That seems to be the norm. In Australia, it's not legal in Australia, but there's
turn a blind eye.
Yeah, barely any enforcement against it. So
if somebody gets obnoxious, then
against the hard drugs, the fentanyl, the cocaine, the morphine, they enforce that, but they're not looking for marijuana.
There certainly are hard men in Scotland. I mean, people who would do the hard drugs and who are and got a problem with trying to get themselves off it. So, there's gangs in Scotland, and they used to. Well, there's very few guns in Scotland. Mm-hmm. So the gangs would enforce their authority with open razors, cutthroat razors. If you're in a fight, you can be cut.
It's an old kind, the old style razor, street razor.
Yeah.
And
So they would enforce their authority that way. Now, of course, I think there are drugs, there are guns now, but yeah. There was a cartoon that I remember, a silly cartoon, but so these gangs are having a fight. And
Something happened. Let's see what happened here. Well, it's still recording. It just says my battery's low. Not
Okay.
a problem.
So, a couple of things left. So this cartoon in the newspaper, there's a couple of gangs going after each other, and one gang member saying to the other, you know, since we moved to electric razors, our fights are just not the same. So let me just sum up who I think I am. Curious, well-travelled, open to other people's cultures, open to other people's ideas, very much anti-discrimination and very much anti-power trips of any kind and any kind of people. I love my kids, love my family, love my wife. That's my partner. And I've had a great blast. I really am. You know, I look about, well, what's next? I'm going to die, sure. Is it going to be easy? Who knows? It's going to be a trip. And what's next? I don't know. Maybe it will be. I'll turn out as a bug or a ballerina. Who knows? But I've had a great time this life. I just wish I knew then more of what I know now, so I didn't have to worry about all of the things that went on. So David, I'm very grateful to you coming. I hope you got what you wanted, and I shall look forward to seeing it on YouTube.
Good enough. Thank you very much for talking to me. I really appreciate it. This is big stuff for me. I just love it. You know?
Good.
Love meeting people,
Yeah.
hearing your story, and really you have had an interesting life. You've travel.
Yeah.
I really want to get back out. I traveled last year. I drove to the West Coast and back
Oh, wow.
in August.
Okay.
It was a beautiful trip.
Yeah.
Really one of my best trips.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Just a note on travel. I just wish more people did it. I mean, New Zealanders and Australians, they travel because they do it once when they leave university, and that's it. They go back home and stay there the rest of life. But that's their chance to broaden their minds, and they know that, and they want to do that. North Americans, not so much. And I wish that more and more people would do as you do and travel and meet people and see there's another way of living, and it's not a wrong way. That it's all acceptable.
One of you talk about the dusty letter or but these things that affect your life. One of the things that affected me when I was early on and I'd gotten back from the Navy, and I was in Redondo Beach,
Mm-hmm.
and my neighbor was a karate teacher,
Uh-huh.
and the couple were into karate, both of them, and they had a bunch of Australians that would come and stay with them, and I met a lot of people from Australia and New Zealand, and had a profound effect on me.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
meeting them and talking about their travels, and they did. They traveled. These people went to Africa and hitchhiked through Africa. I mean, oh my goodness, what guts! I remember even then it seemed to me it took a tremendous amount of courage to do that. And the way they talked about it, it was at times could be dangerous, but
Yeah.
they traveled a lot and had a great time, doing it.
What would you think about selling door to door in South Africa?
Oh my. To who?
6 months. I'd sold door to door in South Africa.
Actually in South Africa,
In
now near
Johannesburg.
in Johannesburg.
In Johannesburg.
Uh-huh.
I didn't realize when they talk about apartheid, they mean apartheid. Equal? No. Separate? Yes. So you've got the town of Johannesburg at about 5 o'clock. All the blacks have to leave the town, and they go out to the townships, Soweto and places like that, and where it's all blacks who live out there. The only blacks who live in Johannesburg are the servants. So anyhow, I'm selling to the white people.
Sure. Sundown laws, they used to call them here. They still,
Yes.
and it really is something we've had to overcome for years. It's still, you know,
Yep.
certain
Certain parts
places
of the
where you
South.
don't want to be
Yep.
if you're not the right color.
Yeah, for sure. Glad I needed to put that in. I forgot about that.
All right,
Okay.
Doug, thank you very much. Mr. Godsman, real pleasure.
Mr. Wallace never got to hear about your history and background.